The laughter came easily at first. It echoed off the concrete walls of the police station, sharp and careless, the kind of laughter that carries judgment without ever asking questions. When the line of heavy motorcycles rolled into the parking lot, engines growling like distant thunder, the officers barely looked up from their coffee cups. Leather jackets, worn boots, patches stitched with skulls and wings. Everyone thought they already knew this story. In their minds, it always ended the same way: trouble, noise, fear, and arrests. But what none of them knew, what no one could have guessed in those first mocking moments, was that before the sunset, that same parking lot would become the stage for something unforgettable. Something that would quietly change how an entire city looked at kindness, second chances, and the people they were too quick to judge. If you believe that kindness can come from the most unexpected places, and that people deserve to be seen for who they truly are, take a moment right now to like this video, share it with someone who needs hope, leave a comment, and subscribe to the channel. Stories like this matter, and your support helps keep them alive. The Hells Angels chapter that arrived that day wasn't new to the city. Everyone knew their name, even those who had never seen a biker up close. The rumors traveled faster than facts, stories of violence, chaos, and rebellion told and retold, until they became something almost mythical. Parents pulled their children closer when motorcycles roared past. Shop owners watched nervously through their windows. And the police, trained to expect the worst, had learned to treat the sight of those jackets as an early warning sign. Yet beneath the noise and the reputation, these men carried lives most people never bothered to imagine. Some were fathers, some were widowers, some were men who had lost everything once already and rebuilt themselves piece by piece on the open road. At the center of this chapter was a man named Marcus. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his beard streaked with gray that came not just from age but from years of carrying responsibility. Marcus had grown up in the same city that now looked at him with suspicion. He knew its streets, its shortcuts, and its scars. As a teenager, he had watched his younger brother slip through the cracks of the system, swallowed by addiction and indifference. When his brother died, alone and unnoticed, Marcus learned a hard truth. Sometimes the world laughs because it doesn't know how to care. That lesson never left him. What brought the Hells Angels to the police station that day had nothing to do with crime, though no one believed that at first. Inside the station, a handful of officers glanced at the security monitors, smirking as the bikers parked in neat rows. Jokes were exchanged quietly, assumptions made loudly. They expected complaints, threats, maybe a show of defiance. What they didn't expect was silence. No shouting, no revving engines. Just men dismounting, standing shoulder to shoulder, their expressions calm and focused. The city itself was struggling. A fire months earlier had destroyed a low-income housing complex on the east side, leaving dozens of families displaced. Promises had been made: temporary shelters, financial aid, long-term solutions, but bureaucracy moved slowly, and winter was approaching faster than help. Children slept in overcrowded rooms, parents skipped meals so their kids could eat, and hope thinned with every cold night. The news covered the fire for a week and then moved on. Most people forgot. The Hells Angels did not. Marcus had seen the aftermath with his own eyes while riding through the city late one night. He had seen a mother trying to keep her children warm with a single blanket, the fear in her eyes cutting deeper than any knife. He didn't see strangers. He saw his own past reflected back at him, and so he made a decision that would test everything the world believed about men. Like him. For weeks, the bikers worked quietly. They organized rides not for show but to raise funds. They reached out to contacts most people wouldn't trust, securing supplies, heaters, clothes, and food. They pooled their own money, sold personal items, and rode hundreds of miles to pick up donated materials. They didn't post about it. They didn't call the press. They knew that if they announced their intentions, no one would take them seriously anyway. The police found out by accident. A city clerk noticed an unusual number of permits being requested under the same name, all linked to a large delivery scheduled for one location, the old community center near the burned complex. Confused and suspicious, the clerk alerted the police. That's how the laughter started. That's how the assumptions were made. A biker group requesting permits near a vulnerable area seemed, to them, like a problem waiting to happen. Inside the police station, the officers watched as Marcus stepped forward with a folder under his arm. His walk was steady, unhurried. He didn't look angry or defensive. He looked tired but determined. When he explained why they were there, not with speeches or demands but with facts, the room shifted. There were no threats, no complaints about harassment. There were blueprints for temporary housing units, lists of donated supplies, schedules for volunteer shifts. The Hells Angels weren't asking for permission to cause trouble. They were asking for coordination to help people. Skepticism didn't disappear overnight. Years of distrust don't dissolve in a single moment. But something about the seriousness in Marcus' eyes made the laughter fade. The officers exchanged glances, unsure how to respond. Eventually, procedures took over. Paperwork was processed. Permits were approved. And just like that, the bikers walked out, leaving behind a silence heavier than the laughter that had filled the room before. The real transformation happened over the next 3 days. Trucks arrived at the community center loaded with supplies. Motorcycles escorted them, not as a show of force, but as a sign of protection. The bikers worked from dawn until nightfall, unloading materials, assembling temporary shelters, installing heaters, and distributing food. They didn't wear their patches while working. They wore plain shirts, their hands blistered and dirty like everyone else's. Children watched from a distance at first, curious and cautious. Then, slowly, they came closer. Police cars began to appear at the edge of the lot, initially sent to monitor the situation. Officers stood with crossed arms, waiting for something to go wrong. But nothing did. Instead, they saw bikers lifting boxes for elderly residents, kneeling to fix broken toys, and quietly handing gloves to kids with cold hands. They saw Marcus listening as a father talked about losing his job after the fire, nodding without judgment. They saw something that didn't fit the story they had been telling themselves for years. By the second night, the temperature dropped sharply. One of the heaters malfunctioned, and a section of the shelter lost power. Without hesitation, several bikers rode through the freezing wind to retrieve replacements from a warehouse miles away. They returned well past midnight, their faces red from the cold, their eyes heavy with exhaustion. The police officer on duty that night watched from his cruiser as they worked under floodlights, refusing help, refusing praise. Something inside him shifted, though he didn't have words for it yet. News spread, not through headlines, but through whispers. People began to talk, not about fear, but about gratitude. A local reporter eventually showed up, expecting a controversy and finding compassion instead. Photos circulated of bikers carrying children, of makeshift homes standing where ashes had been. The city was forced to confront an uncomfortable truth. They had been wrong. On the final day, as the last shelter was secured, a small crowd gathered. Families who had lost everything now stood in front of warm, safe spaces, tears in their eyes. Marcus didn't give a speech. He simply stood back, watching the scene with quiet relief. For him, this wasn't about changing opinions. It was about doing what felt right when the world wasn't looking. Then something unexpected happened. A senior police officer stepped forward, removing his cap. He didn't smile, and he didn't make a grand gesture. He simply nodded toward Marcus and extended his hand. It was a small moment, almost unnoticeable, but for those who understood its weight, it was everything. Years of distance, judgment, and misunderstanding condensed into a single act of respect. As the bikers prepared to leave, engines humming softly, children waved from the doorways of their new shelters. Some of the police waved back, unsure why their throats felt tight. The laughter that had once filled the station seemed like a memory from another lifetime. Before this story ends, I want to ask you something personal. Please take a moment to comment below and share what this story made you feel. Your words matter, and they help build a community that believes in compassion over judgment. The motorcycles disappeared down the road, leaving behind more than supplies and shelters. They left a lesson etched into the heart of the city, that people are more than their reputations, that kindness doesn't always come wrapped in familiar packaging, and that sometimes the ones we fear are the ones who show up when no one else does. The police officers who had laughed that morning returned to their duties quieter than before, carrying with them a new understanding they hadn't expected to find. If this story touched your heart, if it made you see the world a little differently, please like this video, share it with others, and subscribe to the channel. Your engagement tells these stories that they are worth being told, and it reminds us all that even in a world quick to judge, compassion still has the power to surprise us.